Welcome back, friends, to the Marriage Redesign Program. Today we are in Module 4, and we're going to be looking at honesty, ownership, and your transparency plan. So, what I want you to know is truth begins replacing fear. This is what we want the outcome of this module to be: truth replacing fear. Not because everything is already fixed inside of your relationship at this point, but because everything is finally being faced. You're looking at it for what it truly is. Now, up to this point, you've been focusing on safety, security, stability, and stopping the bleed out that you were in. Now we begin something sacred and sobering. We're actually rebuilding truth, not forced truth, not interrogated truth, not weaponized truth either, but truth that restores trust because it is paired with ownership, humility, and consistency. So the scriptures remind us in John 8:32, you shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. But freedom doesn't come just from information alone. Freedom comes when truth is practiced, not just spoken. Now, this module is not about digging up every detail of the past. It's about creating a new pattern for your future. So first off, I want to kind of revisit what transparency actually is and what it is not. So let's reset some expectations, shall we? So transparency is voluntary. You can't force somebody to be transparent, so it's voluntary. It's also consistent and it's not just a hit and miss here and there. It's everyday consistent for the long haul. It's also proactive. It's not after the fact. It's grounded in ownership and designed to reduce fear and restore safety. Transparency is not surveillance. It's not hovering. It's not punishment. It's not forced confession. It's not emotional dumping, nor is it a substitute for internal change. Transparency actually exists for just one purpose: to remove secrecy so that safety can grow. Now, where secrecy lives, fear grows. Where transparency lives, fear begins to loosen its grip. And that's our goal here. So, with that in mind, if you have already finished your transparency plan, now's the time to go revisit it to make sure it is working for you. If you haven't completed your transparency plan yet, your assignment is to do so and to bring that to your next session so we can review it and make sure that it is solid and it is going to work for you in the coming future. Now, let's also talk about ending the denial and defensiveness as a couple. Denial and defensiveness are not character flaws. They really aren't. They're actually fear responses that come about. Denial says, if I don't look at it, maybe it won't hurt so much. Maybe it doesn't exist. Defensiveness says, if I admit it, I'll be rejected. But healing requires something different from both of you. Ownership says, okay, I see the impact of my actions, the betrayal. I see what I've done to my spouse by betraying. I'm also responsible for the repair. I don't need to defend myself to tell the truth. I can just tell the facts as they are, the truth as it is. This is why honesty and safety must grow together. Now, what I want you to know is when defensiveness decreases, truth becomes safer to tell. So the more you walk in truth, the safer it's going to be. So honesty, safety, they grow together. All right. Now I want to touch base with you on your transparency systems. Okay. Again, transparency does not rely just on promises. Promises can be broken. It relies on systems. That's why we have you create a transparency plan. Why? Because systems remove pressure from emotional moments. So your transparency plan or your transparency system, whichever one you want to coin it as, includes clear expectations, predictable rhythms, shared language, consistent follow through. This is necessary so that we can start to rebuild trust. It also protects both of you. As the betrayed partner, you don't have to chase the truth. And as the one who's been unfaithful, you don't have to wait until things explode in order to speak. So structure builds trust faster than emotion ever will. So we create the structure of the transparency plan to help you live out honesty and transparency on a daily basis so that you can start to regrow the trust that was shattered. Now, one other tool that can help you do that this week is what's called a weekly couple check-in. Now, some of you have been doing this because we needed to triage you with this. And some of you, well, this is your first time doing it. So I want you to know that this is not a conflict meeting. This is not a vomiting session either. This is not a processing session. This is a regulated truth sharing space. That's what this check-in is. The purpose behind it is to normalize your honesty with one another, to reduce anxiety between check-in times, between sitting down every week and finding out what's going on in each other's recovery journey, and are we adhering to recovery as the one who's been unfaithful? It also, the purpose is to practice ownership without defensiveness and to prevent buildup and blow-ups. We need to minimize those. Now, your tone for your check-ins should be calm. It should be brief. Doesn't need to last for a 3-hour long session. Check-ins can be anywhere from 15 to 30 minutes long. So they're brief. They're also grounded and contained. So you don't do these when you are completely dysregulated. Make sure you both are regulated. Now, the rule is if emotions escalate, you pause and take a time out. You don't push the issue. Remember, truth spoken in safety builds trust. Truth spoken in chaos does nothing but re-traumatize. So, next, I'm going to be speaking to you as the betrayed partner really quickly in this module. And I still want you as the unfaithful spouse to listen because you've each had your own individual tracks. But this is where I pull you in as a couple so you understand a little bit about each other's journey. So you as the betrayed partner, you are actually focusing on discernment versus interrogation. Now, for many who have been betrayed, especially after betrayal, the nervous system becomes hyper alert, hyper vigilant, so to speak. You are scanning everything for the next shoe to drop, for danger lurking somewhere. Now, this is not your intuition failing you. This is trauma trying to protect you. So interrogation, I want you to really hear me on this. Interrogation is driven by fear. When we are interrogating the one who betrayed us, we are driven by fear. If I ask enough questions, then I'll feel safe. If I know everything, I won't be blindsided again. This is not necessarily true. It really isn't. And it can cause more harm than good. Now, this doesn't mean that you, as the unfaithful, need to say, hey, you don't get to ask me any questions. No, not by any means. What this does mean is you, as the betrayed spouse, need to shift from interrogation. Now, reassurance seeking never actually reassures you. It feeds your anxiety. And when you interrogate, you're actually looking for reassurance. And all this is going to do is feed that panic and anxiety. So we need to get you away from interrogation and we need to set you in what's called discernment. Discernment is actually grounded in truth. This is where you're observing patterns, right? You're observing his actions. You're noticing consistency over time. You're letting the evidence speak louder than the fear that you are experiencing. Discernment asks questions like, what am I seeing over time? Is the behavior aligning with his words? Am I grounded or activated right now? Right? Am I dysregulated or regulated? You see, your healing grows when you shift from chasing reassurance to grounding yourself in reality, and discernment helps you do that. Now, let me shift the focus for a moment and speak to you as the unfaithful spouse for a moment about radical honesty and the foundation of change. Radical honesty does not mean brutal honesty. And what I mean by that is sharing all the truth does not mean that you've got to be brutal in it and share details that are going to, that you know in your heart are going to actually wound your spouse. You're doing it with the intent to brutally wound them. That's not the way to share truth. Radical honesty is beautiful. Now, what this means is unfiltered ownership without self-protection. Okay, so in other words, you're going to be radically honest without trying to be defensive and protecting yourself. You know that your spouse needs honesty, so you're going to do so. This is where we clarify an essential distinction. So let me just kind of be clear on two things that are extremely important at this point. That's confession versus repentance. They are two completely different things. Now, you may have confessed, and confession sounds like, I admit that I did that. Okay, so you're admitting to your actions, but that's all you're doing, right? I got caught, I'm admitting it. That's confession. But what is true repentance? Because that's the better road. Repentance says, I'm turning away from the man I was, the man who hurt you, and seeking to become better, a better man. I am changing how I live, how I act, how I think, how I speak. And I accept the cost of rebuilding trust. I accept the consequences of what I did. You see, repentance shows up as consistency, transparency without someone having to prompt you to be transparent, humility without being defensive, and patience with your spouse's healing process. Radical honesty also builds safety because it says, you don't have to extract the truth from me. I'll bring it into the light myself, willfully, willfully. So where do you land? Be honest with yourself because this is vitally important. Now, I want you to know inside of this module, you may not feel safe yet on your journey where you are. And I get that. And that's okay. It's absolutely okay. Trust is not built through feelings, not by any means. It is built through repeated experiences of safety and truth. And that is what we're seeking to get you to walk in. The real outcome of this module right here is simple, but it's very powerful. Fear begins losing its authority when you walk in these things. Truth becomes predictable. Ownership replaces defensiveness. Safety starts forming a foundation of trust. When you start being radically honest, you're transparent, you're working your transparency plan. We're also not denying and being defensive. We're not interrogating, but we're seeking to be in reality and use discernment. When we're doing all of these things, this is when true trust starts to rebuild. Now, this is not the end of your work. This is the beginning of stability through truth. So I want you to remember this as we come to a close today. Healing does not require perfection. There's no way you're going to be perfect in this. No one ever is. It requires honesty practiced over time. God does not heal what we hide. Let me say that again. God will not and does not heal what you choose to hide, but He heals what we bring into the light, what we expose with humility and surrender. You're not doing this to punish the past. You are doing this to protect your future. And step by step, truth is going to replace the fear that you've been experiencing. Now, you've got your downloadable. I hope you had downloaded it and you went through this together. All right, I really hope that you did because that's important. You also have a weekly couple check-in worksheet that is accompanying this as a tool that I want you to use. This is your start. If you haven't started yet check-ins, this is your start. This is where you're going to have a check-in agreement with one another. You're going to regulate yourself. You're going to have an honest check-in with some guided questions. You're going to be receiving truth, do a discernment check, really walking through a radical honesty commitment with one another. And then you're going to kind of check where your emotions are, right? And then after the check-in, you're going to have some things to check through. Okay? So finish your homework, and I will see you in your couple session. Be blessed.